welcome viewers. I am Pia and you're watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines this hour. US President Donald Trump has stated that he is unhappy but not surprised by Russian strikes on Kiev and has urged both sides to end the war. This comes after the strike in Kiev yesterday, which killed at least 23 people. The UN Security Council has approved the final extension for UN peacekeepers in Lebanon with withdrawal scheduled for 31st December 2026. This vote comes amid pressure from Israel and the US. The Israeli military has targeted Houthi rebel positions near the Yemeni capital of Sana'a. The strike comes after Houthis launched missiles and drones against Israel as well as shipping routes. The United Nations has urged Iran and global powers to finalize a nuclear deal within 30 days in order to avoid new UN sanctions. UN spokesperson has called it a window for peace. Brazil's foreign ministry has ordered CAMEX to study using reciprocity law against US trade measures. The law allows countermeasures like tariffs. The United States has ended tariff exemptions on small imported packages, raising fears of higher consumer prices. The Trump administration cites abuse of duty-free shipments. U.S. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has criticized the CDC after its chief's removal, calling for an overhaul. He claims that the agency failed during COVID-19 and has questioned its past public health claims. U.S. President Donald Trump will address the United Nations General Assembly in New York on the 23rd of September, marking his first speech of his second term. Well, viewers, those were the headlines and our top focus. We're now learning that U.S. Senator Roger Wicker, chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee and a strong advocate for Taiwan, arrived in Taipei on Friday in order to reaffirm the close partnership between the U.S. and Taiwan, especially amid rising military pressure from China. Here is what he said as he landed at the airport.
Stand here to re-emphasize the partnership and the security friendship agreement that the United States has had with Taiwan for some decades.
Wicker was accompanied by Senator Deb Fischer. He then emphasized upon the long-standing security and friendship agreements between the two sides and expressed enthusiasm for upcoming discussions with Taiwanese officials, including President Lai Ching-te, and has stated that Taiwan has the right to be free and preserve its self-determination. Listen in.
Of course, we know that that thriving democracy is never fully assured, and nor is it anywhere on the face of the earth, which is why the United States has been voting in recent weeks and months to build up our national defense. And we're here to talk to our friends and allies in Taiwan about what we're doing to enhance worldwide peace.
This visit comes as tensions escalate in the region, especially with China increasing military activity near Taiwan and maintaining its claim over the island. Despite Washington's lack of formal diplomatic ties with Taipei, the United States remains Taiwan's most important international backer as well as arms supplier. Now, Wicker's visit showcases continued U.S. support for Taiwan's right to self-determination and security as well. Joining us on the broadcast is Mr. Ross Gold. He's a political analyst from Taipei. Thank you so much for taking out time speaking to us on NewsX World. Interesting development. A U.S. Senator has now arrived in Taipei. Roger Wicker is the chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee. U.S. has staunchly backed Taiwan, especially since we see the rise of the Chinese aggression in the South China Sea. There have been several incursions by Chinese aircrafts, Chinese ships as well into Taiwanese water over Taiwanese airspace. And we've seen a lot of build-up of Chinese military infrastructure in artificial islands around Taipei, Taiwan in particular. What can we expect from this visit, especially taking in view the recent activity by the PLA?
Frankly, I wouldn't expect too much from this visit. As you indicated, U.S.-Taiwan relations, specifically in the military sphere, are very close. There's wide expectations that in the coming months, the two sides are going to announce a very large weapons purchase. This is part of reaching a trade agreement between Taiwan and the United States, and the government here in Taiwan has already indicated that it wants to make a very large weapons purchase. Maybe even in amounts greater than the first Trump administration, when Taiwan purchased about $19 billion of U.S. weapons. Also important to keep in mind that right now the United States Congress is in recess. It's very common for members of Congress to fly around the world and visit foreign countries during congressional recesses. And during recesses, we very often have members of the United States Congress visit Taiwan. So the visit by itself is not unusual. It might be informative for the senator who, as you said, is chairman of the Armed Services Committee. But in the overall bilateral relationship, which is pretty strong, it's one small event.
Indeed, and a quick follow-up to that, we've been seeing increased activity. In fact, last month itself, Taiwan's Ministry for National Defense had detected 58 Chinese aircrafts, 9 Chinese naval vessels, as well as 1 official ship around its territorial waters. And out of the 58 sorties, around 45 had crossed the median line. We've been seeing increased talk about the Penghu archipelago as well, which sits merely 50 kilometers west of Taiwan's main island. There's a lot of murmur. Experts are saying China is preparing to invade Taiwan. Is this something that could occur in the near future?
I have a standard reply to that question, which I remind people here in Taiwan as well as outside Taiwan, is that stakeholders here in Taiwan, the government, the military, the public, they need to prepare as if an invasion could occur tomorrow. And if they don't prepare accordingly, then they might very well lose a war should China invade. The threat is very real. Every year, China has a very large increase in its defense budget. Their technological capabilities constantly improve as well, whether that's in cyber or satellites, drones. So the threat is tremendous, and Taiwan needs to do what's necessary to defend itself.
Indeed, and I'd like to digress a little bit and speak about the Indo-Pacific at large. What we've been seeing over the last few weeks is the Trump administration in the US singling out India, imposing 50% tariffs on goods, claiming that the war in Ukraine is being financed by India, that it is Modi's war in particular. We do know that the Quad summit is on the anvil, but do you think the Quad is now taking a back foot?
I'm trying to keep a positive view on this. Certainly, there's been a tremendous amount of media coverage to the possibility that India-U.S. relations are taking a downturn, and specifically because of the tariff that the Trump administration has imposed over India's purchases of Russian oil. But ultimately, India's greatest security threat is China, and India's greatest partner with regard to that threat is the United States. And there was such a great relationship between Modi and Trump during the first Trump administration. And to be fair, the Biden-Modi relationship was strong as well. There was many joint projects announced during the Biden administration in various areas like technology industry cooperation, health, and others. So I'm going to remain an optimist. It's very possible that a deal will be reached between between Ukraine and Russia that will include some sanctions relief, and this problem might just go away for India, and India might be willing to wait this out. But I'm going to remain an optimist on U.S.-India relations despite all the negative talk in recent days.
All right. I request you to stay on with us as we're shifting our focus away from Taiwan towards what's happening within Indonesia. Now, tensions are escalating in Jakarta after a motorcycle ride-sharing driver, Afan Kurniawan, was killed by a police vehicle during clashes near the Parliament building yesterday. The incident has sparked protest calls by student groups and motorcycle drivers in particular, prompting schools to let students leave early and banks and businesses to ask employees to work from home. Now, the military has been deployed in some areas in order to maintain order. President Prabowo Subianto has expressed shock and condemned the excessive police actions and has ordered a transparent investigation into this matter. 7 police officers from the armored vehicle involved have been arrested already. This death has now led to public outrage with funeral processions by hundreds of ride-sharing drivers, while legal aid groups are calling for the release of 600 protesters detained during the demonstrations. Let's in fact listen in to what some of the protesters have had to say.
Untuk tunjangan mereka itu kalau nggak salah 3 juta per hari dihitung per hari. Sedangkan masyarakat sendiri di Indonesia itu masih banyak yang masih kekurangan, masih berada di tahap
DPR listriknya siapa yang bayar? Pajaknya siapa yang bayar? Udah dibayarin, kita mau dibikinin lagi. Enak aja. Hanya satu kata, apa? Yang keras, apa?
Protests erupted in Jakarta 2 days back when students, workers and activists took to the streets against lavish parliamentary allowances and perceived corrupt elites. Now, demonstrators objected to a monthly housing allowance of 50 million rupiah or $3,075 for lawmakers, which is nearly 10 times the local minimum wage in addition to their salaries. Mr. Ross Feingold still with us on the broadcast. We've just heard some of the local protesters also speak out. They had highlighted their discontent with this allowance in particular, and they questioned who pays for these allowances. They had asked, while we receive low wages and the lawmakers are now reaping benefits, and it's been one of these low-wage workers, a motorcycle rider, who's lost his life tragically in excessive force. What do you make of these protests that are taking place, and of course the very glaring economic aspect to this?
If we go back to last year, the Indonesian presidential election, Prabowo Subianto was elected with about 59% of the votes. So he was extremely popular at the time of his election. He took office last October, so a little less than a year ago. And unfortunately for him, he's had to confront a lot of domestic opposition to some of his policy decisions. And he needs to be careful here. He doesn't want this to get out of hand. But in the last few days, we've seen scenes of tremendous violence. And now we have the death of this young man who is a very sympathetic person, and he's going to capture, and his death is going to capture a lot of attention and cause a lot of anger. He was somebody working for the gig economy, supporting his family, and he was killed by the police. So the protesters are going to want justice. But beyond the specific incident and the tragic death of this one young man is the growing public anger over some of the policy decisions of President Prabowo. And he needs to be careful here. He needs to be careful that he's not seen as favoring entrenched interests. He's not seen as favoring the tycoons and the wealthy and the members of the Indonesian parliament. So he needs to make sure that his policies are actually popular with the broader public and are not seen as just benefiting a select few.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Feingold, for taking our time speaking to us today on NewsX World. With that, viewers, we're shifting focus towards South Korea, where we're learning that former First Lady Kim Kyun-hee, wife of ousted ex-president Yoon Suk-yeol, has now been indicted on bribery and other serious charges as part of an investigation into the country's recent martial law crisis and related scandals. Both Kim and Yoon are currently in jail, with Yoon already on trial for insurrection linked to his failed attempt to impose martial law last December. Kim, meanwhile, faces allegations including stock manipulation and accepting bribes, such as luxury gifts from a Unification Church official, charges her lawyers deny. Meanwhile, former Prime Minister Han Duck-soo has also been indicted for abetting insurrection. Joining us on the broadcast is Dr. Sanjay Kumar. He's a journalist from the Korea Herald, joining us live from Seoul. Thank you so much for speaking to NewsX World. For the benefit of our viewers, could you explain to us what exactly are the charges against Kim Kyun-hee and what has been panning out? What is the sentiment of the people on the ground as well as far as this case is concerned?
Well, there are three charges that has been framed, and it is turning out to be true when it comes to the legal procedures. Those acts are the Capital Market Act, then Political Funds Act, and bribery. So if we see it precisely, then these three charges have been framed, and the special counsel is not only investigating, but now it has indicted also, framing those charges and bringing Kim Kyun-hee to the books. If you ask the public sentiments here, then public sentiments here were very much against because of former President Yoon Suk-yeol's hawkish approach and his involvement in many of the political scandals. So people here, they are considering this as a political scandal, and they want justice. And under new president, they are seeing that definitely justice is going to be delivered. The bad news for Kim Kyun-hee and former President Yoon Suk-yeol is that even their hardcore supporters are now losing hope because new president ratings are getting higher, and this is sending very negative signals to even the staunch supporters of former President Yoon. And another bad news for former President Yoon and former First Lady Kim Kyun-hee is that they have got a new president just a few days back in People Power Party. And the new president doesn't look very interested in raising these issues. So we can say that the timing for Kim Kyun-hee is very rocky. She is going through very bad time. She has admitted also that something has not been right, and she has said that she is going to support the trials, and she has been apologetic for all these kinds of distress. So both of the couples, couple are in hot water, you can say, from public perspective.
You've mentioned that President Lee Jae-myung's ratings are skyrocketing. Meanwhile, the PPP has a new president. But what about the image of the party at large, which has been dented by Yoon Suk-yeol's decision to impose martial law last December, as well as the scandal of his wife with regards to bribery? How do you think the new president is looking at repairing this dent that has been caused?
See, from people's perspective, they don't want to, especially in Korea, people are very much against this kind of scandals, and morality is always in the center if you do politics in Korea. So Korean people want that kind of morality in public life to be established and to be executed and be followed by all the people, especially if you belong from opposition as well as the ruling party. Like if you are a political person, you have to be politically not just correct, but also moral responsibility is so high. The moral standards are very high. And because of this, President Yoon had been framed a lot. And on top of that, especially after imposing martial law, he lost even support of within his party, and many of his close aides were also against this. Many of his aides, including cabinet members, were not informed about this martial law. That is why he lost the political ground here. So you can say that conservative bloc here in Korea, they have suffered a lot because of President Yoon Suk-yeol's martial law, and they don't want to recall those timings, and they want to revive conservative party. So the focus is very different, and that is why former President Yoon and Kim Gon-hee is going through tough times. Kim Gon-hee and President Yoon both admits that the timing is very dark for them. But the People Power Party don't want the future of the party to be darker. So that is the situation here, and people also don't want to see a dark conservative or what to say, or a negative kind of politics coming again. They just want to forget whatever happened, because for almost 6 months there was a lot of hue and cry in the political circles. So now the political circles also want to have a fresh start, and they want to move on, because there are different challenging agendas under President because of the Trump tariffs. Things and items have not been finalized yet. I mean, the tariffs on various items have not been finalized. That is why the focus and agenda is very different. They don't want to bring this scandal and all this negative politics
move away from the political tumult. Thank you so much, Dr. Kumar, for taking out time joining us on NewsX World. With that, we're shifting focus to more developments coming in. European Union's foreign policy chief, Kaja Kallas, has stated that the next 30 days will be very crucial in finding a diplomatic solution to Iran's nuclear program. Now, her remarks have come after France, Britain and Germany, known as the E3 powers, triggered a mechanism that could reimpose United Nations sanctions on Iran within 30 days, citing Tehran's failure to meet nuclear commitments made a decade ago. Let's in fact listen in to what she said on the issue.
But when it comes to Iran, then you know all that yesterday the snapback was started. So we are entering a new phase, this 30 days that is now giving us also the opportunity to really find diplomatic ways to find a solution.
The United Nations has also described this period as a window of opportunity to reach a new agreement, while Iran has warned that it will respond to Europe's move appropriately, which could risk ending the most sustained diplomatic push in years for a peaceful solution to the Iranian nuclear crisis. Joining me on the broadcast is my colleague Asuma Kataoka from the newsroom. Asuma, what further details do you have? We do know that a meeting had taken place recently between the E3 powers and Iran, but somehow talks have broken down and this ultimatum is hanging over Tehran's head.
Yes, Pia, like you've also stated in the intro that the E3 and Iran's Arakchi met, Foreign Minister Arakchi met, and they talked. However, the talks did not lead to a breakthrough. By breakthrough, meaning that IAEA is not allowed back into Iran to watch over their nuclear program. However, Iran has maintained that its nuclear program stays and always was peaceful. It's for citizens' uses, it's for peaceful purposes. However, IAEA is not confident, and European and Western powers are not confident in Iran's claims, and they want IAEA to get in Iran as soon as possible. However, the most basic from Iran's claims or defense, Iran says that being in IAEA, they were not protected when back in June, Israel and US attacked their nuclear facilities. And because of that, there's no trust anymore from Iran's side, and they want the protection of the basic protection of their nuclear sites, even if there's a collision between any country and Iran. And E3 has said, after these talks, E3 has come out and said in a statement that they have done everything, but the talks have not led to any solution, and they feel like it's time for them to put on all the sanctions again. Iran seems like, from what critics have said, within Iran there's a divide, as some of them who are mostly people supporting the current regime, they say that no matter what happens, don't let them come in, like meaning the IAEA. And then there's another people who are saying that the sanctions have put Iran's economy in a staggering low, and they're not happy with how their lives are, and they want Iranian government to abide by U.S. Demands, and they want change within their country. So Iran seems divided, but we will see that what will happen in the next 30 days, as statements have come in saying that the next 30 days will be crucial, and we will be keeping an eye on that.
Absolutely. This is something that even the United Nations has in fact reacted to earlier in the day. Iran had threatened to in fact pull out of the nuclear non-proliferation treaty earlier, and talks were taking place between the US and Iran before US decided to strike 3 facilities within the country, and since then it's been the E3 that stepped in, but somehow things are not panning out the way the Western powers are looking at. Thank you so much, Asuma, for joining us on the broadcast, sharing all those details. Viewers, we have some breaking news coming in. We are now learning that the Thai court has ousted Prime Minister Paetongtarn, citing constitutional disqualifications and violations of ethical rules. This decision effectively ends her tenure immediately. This is another crushing blow to the Shinawatra political dynasty that could usher in a new period of turmoil. Paetongtarn, who was Thailand's youngest prime minister, now becomes the 6th premier from or backed by the billionaire Shinawatra family to be removed by the military or judiciary in a tumultuous 2-decade battle for power between the country's warring elites. So this decision has been taken by Thailand's constitutional court, which has now dismissed Prime Minister Paetongtarn Shinawatra from office. In its verdict, the court has said that she violated ethics in a leaked June telephone call during which she appeared to kowtow to Cambodia's former leader Hun Sen when both countries were at the brink of an armed border conflict. Remember, fighting had erupted weeks later and lasted 5 days. Now, this decision paves the way for the election by Parliament of a new Prime Minister, a process that could be drawn out, especially with Paetongtarn's ruling Pheu Thai party losing bargaining power and facing a challenge to shore up a fragile alliance with a razor-thin majority. The ruling also brings a premature end to the premiership of the daughter of the influential tycoon Thaksin Shinawatra. Paetongtarn was a political neophyte when she was thrust abruptly into the spotlight after the surprise dismissal of predecessor Srettha Thavisin by the same court a mere year ago. Although Paetongtarn has apologized over the leak call and stated that she was trying to avert a war, the Constitutional Court has now found her guilty and has now dismissed her from position of power. What is interesting is that she is the 5th premier in 17 years to be removed by the Constitutional Court, which of course underlines its central role in an intractable power struggle between elected governments of the Shinawatra clan and a nexus of powerful conservatives and royal generals with far-reaching influence. Now, of course, what remains to be seen is who will replace Paetongtarn, especially with Thaksin expected to be at the heart of a flurry of horse trading between parties and other power brokers in order to try to keep the Pheu Thai in charge over the coalition. But of course, they're also facing 3 high-stakes court cases, and this is the second of which in a ruling has now been given. That's all that we're tracking from Thailand. Meanwhile, shifting focus to Colombia, Colombia's defense ministry has confirmed the release of 33 soldiers who were kidnapped earlier this week in a jungle region of southeastern area of the country. Now, the soldiers were abducted on the 25th of August following clashes in the El Retorno municipality that left 11 guerrillas dead, including a commander of a dissident faction of the former FARC rebel group. Let's listen in to what the commander of the Colombian military forces had to say.
Hacia la vereda de Nueva York, zona rural del municipio del Retorno, en el departamento del Guaviare, esta noche fueron liberados nuestros valientes soldados e infantes de marina que fueron secuestrados, aislados y presionados bajo extremas condiciones, pero jamás fueron vencidos.
Meanwhile, authorities say that the area remains a stronghold for armed groups that rejected the 2016 peace deal, and it is a strategic corridor for drug trafficking with extensive cacao crops. Now, the Defense Ministry has also accused the group of recruiting minors and pressurizing civilians in order to oppose the state forces. Joining us on the broadcast is Major General Dr. Roger Wicker. He's a senior strategic and defense expert, joining us live from New Delhi. Thank you so much for taking our time speaking to us on NewsX World. What do you make of the recent news that 33 soldiers who were earlier kidnapped by rebel forces in Colombia have now been released?
You see, Pia, this issue in Colombia is a long-running cycle of armed conflict, a weak state control in rural areas, and this is not the first time we have seen things like the Colombian army being targeted. It has happened previously also, and especially after the peace accord 2016, there was a peace accord between the revolutionary armed forces of Colombia called FARC and the right-wing paramilitaries with the government. But not all rebels were disarmed at that point of time. We see these kind of conflicts in other parts of the world also whenever peace accords take place without UN intervention. You see, what happens is that if you get the UN involved, then a sense of stability comes to the region. But here we don't find any UN involvement. So these ex-FARC fighters have rejected the peace deal, and they are normally operating in areas like Guavar, Coca, Aroca, and Catatumbo, which are basically the drug routes, and the illegal mining and extortion networks are actually rampant here. As you would be aware that Colombia is the world's largest producer of cocoa. That's the raw material for cocaine. So this cocoa cultivation remains concentrated in the rural areas where the state has got a little control over this thing. And that is why these cartels, these drug cartels, and they are quite armed. Actually, they have, private armies of their own there. And the rebel groups, they create a cycle of violence and instability. The villagers there are influenced by these drug cartels, firstly out of money, secondly out of fear. So they tend to cooperate with these FARC rebels. And this is what has happened. These are basically ungoverned spaces where government or the Colombian army has very, very little control of these areas. And that is why this kidnapping of 33 Colombian soldiers, mainly by the villagers who were actually mobilized by the rebels. And they are, most of them in these villages have got their sympathy with the rebels there. So I think in times to come, the Colombian government will have to take control of the rural areas, because these kind of armed groups, drug trafficking and weak governance will continue to destabilize these rural areas. So I I am of the actually firm opinion that these forces, and Colombia is not a very large army. It's only 2.3 lakh active, military personnel. So they will have to have a strategy of military pressure, peace negotiations, and rural development programs, because it is very important. Whenever we have seen insurgency, even in our northeast, where we have seen how the insurgencies were actually controlled, and if we apply that kind of a template to this area, then rural development programs on how to generate employment, their health issues, their education sort of facilities, and their well-being of these villagers and the rural areas, it is required, because these rebels today are almost 4,000 odd fighters there. It is something like, if I can give you example of Baluchistan, what is happening, the BLA is also around 4,000 to 5,000, and they have their writ in the rural areas. In the urban areas, they don't operate, but in the rural areas, whenever the Pakistan army is there, they will carry out ambushes, IED blasts, and things like that. So a similar kind of strategy I see here also in Colombia, where in the rural area, this FARC is quite dominant.
Absolutely. So you'd refer to the fact that this is quite common. Even back in June, there were 57 Colombian armed forces personnel who were abducted. Thank you so much, Major General Rajan Kochar, for taking out time speaking to us on NewsX World. Meanwhile, viewers, we're tracking more news. We're learning that the American Jewish Committee has now expressed that it was troubled by recent criticism of India from the US officials in a strongly worded statement. Now, the AJC has acknowledged concerns over India's energy ties with Russia, but has emphasized that India is not responsible for Putin's actions. Calling India a sister democracy and a vital US strategic partner, the group has stressed that New Delhi has a key role to play in global power dynamics. The AJC is now urging a reset in US-India relations. Well, viewers, that's